Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on the show today, a new Texans 7-round mock draft after the Texans have traded for Christian Kirk and cut Shaq Mason. And I know we're in full swing free agency mode here at Chat Sports, but at the same time, there's some interesting stuff that's out right now, and I wanted to go to something that I saw Houston beat reporter, somebody who I get a ton of Houston news from. He put this out on social media, and I wanted to, read this through with you really quick before I went through this mock draft. The Texans plan to bolster the guard position through free agency and the 2025 NFL draft after moving on from guard Shaq Mason. So, everybody thought, the Texans, they got Christian Kirk. What are they going to do now in round one of the NFL draft? Me, along with a lot of people were saying, the Texans are likely going to get a wide receiver in round one. I don't think that's the case anymore. After cutting Shaq Mason, after trading for Christian Kirk, I don't see a world where the Texans go wide receiver in round one unless that is their best player on the board by far. So let me know your thoughts. After the trade for Christian Kirk, what position do you think the Texans draft in round one? I suspect a lot of y'all will be doing the same thing that I'm doing and going O-line in round one. And that's exactly where I start off this mock draft. Josh Simmons fell to me at pick 25 in round one, and I ran that card up to the board. And I know a lot of y'all, probably a lot of college football fans from this past season are like, Josh Simmons, I don't really, I didn't hear a lot about him throughout the year. Yeah, it's because he got injured during the season, did not play, I believe it was a patella tendon injury. But let's look back to his 2023 PFF grades where he was pretty good. And if you look at a lot of, the draft experts, scouting guys, a lot of them have Josh Simmons, if he wasn't injured, as the number one tackle in this year's class. So if you're telling me I can get that value at pick 25 of a guy who is, he's still young, got injured, unfortunately, but maybe fortunately for the Houston Texans, you have the best lineman in this draft fall to you all the way to pick 25. And as we look at the Texans offensive line depth chart after they release Shaq Mason, I know, Josh Simmons played tackle at Ohio State, and that might be a tricky situation with what you do with the offensive line moving forward, but hey, if he's the best lineman on the board, you take him and you figure out all the rest afterwards. Either you move him to guard, you move Blake Fisher into guard, whatever you have to do. If he's the best on your board, I don't care if you already have two tackles on your team. You pick the best lineman and you make it work. And that's what I'm doing in this first round of my mock draft 3.0, taking Josh Simmons, because I truly do believe the Texans are going to double dip at the offensive line position this offseason. I think they're going to take one in free agency, and I think they'll also take one in the first 2, maybe 3 rounds of the NFL draft. And that's exactly what I did with my latest mock draft here, taking Josh Simmons at pick 25. Now, let's go to round 2. We're going to stay in the trenches, and I know a lot of people on Twitter, a lot of draft guys have been salivating over the idea of Joshua Farmer in the second round, so I couldn't pass it up this time. I went with the Florida State defensive tackle in round 2. We are building the trenches in H-Town in this mock draft, and Joshua Farmer, he is a very intriguing prospect. This past season for Florida State, 32 tackles, 8 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 26 pressures. He, projects out as a 3-tech tweener defensive tackle who gives you pretty good pass rushing ability. Now, if he's able to stop the run and be more of a run stuffer, his value would go way up. I think he would actually be a first-round talent. But those concerns in the run game is why a lot of mocks have him sliding to round 2. But he is still a tremendous talent for the Texans to get as a prospect in the trenches. You add him to this scary defensive line already. The Eagles laid out a blueprint, and I think the rest of the NFL will follow. Build in the trenches. O-line, D-line. If you can win there, you're going to win most of your games, and that's how I have the Texans going in this mock draft. Building in the trenches, O-line round 1, and D-line in round 2. Now, we are on the road to 30,000 subs here at Texans Today, and thank you everybody who's already hit that sub button. I told y'all, if we can get to 30,000 subs by draft day. We will be going live for the first round selection of the Houston Texans and possibly some more picks that the Texans have throughout the NFL draft. But I need your help. Go down and hit that sub button if you haven't already for free Texans content all year long. Let's go on to round 3 of this mock draft. I went with one of my favorite prospects. Obviously, a lot of us are from Texas, and I'm guessing a lot of us have watched a lot of University of Texas football this year. And one guy that stood out to me, I know a lot of people love Jahdae Barron. I do too. I think he might be the best, defensive back in this year's class. But Andrew Mukuba was awesome for the Longhorns this season, and getting him in round 3, I would love that in helping shoring up the secondary for the Texans. In 2024, 69 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, 12 pass breakups, 5 interceptions that tied the leading for the Longhorns this past season, and 1 forced fumble. As we look at deeper into his analytics, the coverage stats from this past season, didn't get targeted a ton, 23 times, only allowed 10 completions for 74 yards, no touchdowns, and a quarterback rating of 12.1 when targeted. He was fantastic. And I love the fact that, 1, he went to school for 4 years, so he has that experience. And 2, he played at 2 prolific programs. He played at Clemson, and then he played at the University of Texas. And I think adding Mukuba to a secondary that already has these 3 young building blocks in Kalen Bullock, Kamari Lassiter, and Derek Stingley, who had 5, 4, and 7 interceptions this past season, respectively, including the playoffs, I should say, for these numbers. I think that makes the Texans secondary one of the best in the entire National Football League. And adding a guy like Mukuba allows the Texans to let Jalen Petrie play that hybrid safety linebacker role, because he played his best ball whenever he was up in the box, playing in the slot, being able to press up against, the slot or tight end of the other team, or, kind of look at where the running back is in the backfield. The Texans run a lot of that, 4 down lineman, 2 linebacker, 5 guys in the secondary. Adding another secondary piece kind of completes the puzzle for me for this Texans secondary moving into this next season. Now, we have the rest of my mock draft coming up in just a moment, but trying to get the new H-Town gear, the secondary logo be dripped out this year with that H-Town swag. One place and one place only to go. You got to go to chatsports.com/H-Town. It'll have all the Texans secondary logo gear that you need. If you need a sweater, t-shirt, long sleeve, hats, whatever you need, they got it there. Go check it out. That link's going to be in the comment section and description of today's video. One more time, go to chatsports.com/H-Town to check out all the secondary Houston gear that they have over with our friends at Fanatics. Round 4, I got a weapon. I was looking at the receivers. I didn't love the value of the guys that were there in round 4, and partly also because I think Brashard Smith is one of these guys. This is the best running back class that I have ever seen since covering the Houston Texans, since being a football fan, really, and covering the NFL draft. This running back class is fantastic, and Smith is one of those guys who is awesome and is going to fall in the draft and make some team in round 4, round 5 very happy. I couldn't pass him up in this mock draft. 235 carries this past year, over 1,300 yards. He averaged 5.7 yards per carry, and great catching the ball out of the backfield. 39 receptions for 327 yards, 18 touchdowns in total for SMU this past year. And like I said, he gives you that versatility. Was a wide receiver whenever he played for the University of Miami, comes to SMU, transitions to a running back role. This is exactly the 1-2 punch that I would love to see with Joe Mixon in this new Nick Caley offense. They're going to have more of an emphasis of running the ball. They already re-signed Dare Agumbawale back to the team. I think he's more of a special teamer. I still want to believe in Dameon Pierce, but at the end of the day, I still think this Texans team needs a lightning to Joe Mixon's thunder, and I think Brashard Smith could be that in this year's draft. Now, let's go into round 5, where Danny Stutsman fell to us, and I don't really think he falls all the way to round 5. I see him as more of a round 3, round 4 prospect, but for the sake of this mock draft, I took him in round 5, pick 167, and Obviously, the Texans have some good linebackers. They have Azeez Al-Shire, who recently restructured his contract, and you have Henry Toto, Christian Harris on the last year of his rookie deal. But that's the thing, Christian Harris, last year of his rookie deal. I think you need a little bit more depth there at the linebacker spot, especially if you're not able to re-sign some of the guys that are possibly leaving in free agency, one of them being a big special teamer in Neville Hewitt, and at least getting a guy like Danny Stutsman. I think at the very least, you're going to get a really, really good special teamer who gives you upside as a possibility to potentially start at linebacker down the road. He played really good for OU. He was a leader there for the Sooners, and I think getting him in round 5 would be another steal for the Houston Texans in this mock draft. As you look at his career stats, great numbers over the past 3 years for OU. I love the idea if Danny Stutsman falls to us in round 5, going ahead and running that card up there. So this means we have one more pick left. Round 7, 243. I finally went with a receiver. The Texans traded for Christian Kirk, so I didn't feel like it was a necessary, must grab in the first 3 rounds. I kind of waited a little bit, but fortunately, somebody really good fell to me in round 7 in LaJohntay Webster from Colorado. 74 receptions, 931 yards this past season for the Buffaloes, and in 2023 had a fantastic year as well. Over 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns, 108 receptions. Another guy, I don't know if he falls to us in round 7. If he does, though, I would absolutely love it. I think the value in this draft might be the very best mock draft that I've done so far. So here it is. The 6 picks for the Texans after the moves for Christian Kirk, cutting Shaq Mason. Let me know your thoughts down below. A, B, C, D, or F. What would you grade my Texans mock draft 3.0 before the start of NFL free agency? That's all I have for you on today's show, folks. Make sure you hit me up on Twitter at Jeremy Chuggs. And once again, we are on the road to 30,000 subscribers. I'm trying to get there before the NFL draft. Help me out. Get free Texans content by going down there and hitting that sub button.